Now, on to our next segment. Ruger seems to be doing quite well for themselves. The RXM seems to be doing exactly what people wanted from it. A G19 Gen 3 at a good price point without the quality control concerns of the PSA Dagger. Ruger's also launching another partnership with Dead Air Silencers this time, and in an article in Shooting News Weekly, Ruger says that 31% of their revenue is coming from just 4 guns: the 1022 Carbon Fiber Edition, the RXM pistol, the Ruger American Rifle Gen 2, and the Ruger Precision Rifle. It seems that in this new American manufacturing-based future that we are headed towards, Ruger is in a good position to take advantage, with Ruger's operations mostly protected from any negative impacts of the tariffs in the short term. But, as I've pointed out before, we're unlikely to see any major long-term impacts on end prices, as things get negotiated into a position where U.S. manufacturing is protected and incentivized to return from overseas and protected from undue overseas competition, particularly from China. However, it's not just Ruger that's pointing out that Ruger is doing well. The National Association of Sporting Goods Wholesalers echo Ruger's claims, putting the Ruger American Gen 2 as a top performer in bolt-action rifles in their Q1 2025 scope report. To get into more detail on the report, it does note that background checks are down slightly by 4.2%, and shotgun and rifles are taking a dip in sales. But this is offset by continued strong demand for pistols such as the G19, the G43X, and the P365. Also, we can see in the report that 9mm and 5.56 are dominating things, with the two calibers accounting for around 35% of all ammunition shipments, and centerfire cartridges accounting for 70%. I'll link to the full report below, but in all, the report concludes that while the firearms market overall is healthy, it is somewhat stabilizing due to inflated demand caused by tariff and other election cycle fears. So far, it seems that if the 2A industry is going to see some kind of a Trump slump, as there's little reason to panic buy when the White House is looking at the Second Amendment mostly favorably, the slump is not going to be overly pronounced. If anything, now is probably a good time to rev up your marketing. Get attention, don't fade out of your customers' or potential customers' minds. Leverage social media, polish your local SEO efforts, point out what your product offerings bring to the table, value, reliability, etc. And if you'll let me be biased for a moment, reach out to Cap and Ball Digital Strategies for expert help. We have a dedicated free digital marketing guide for FFLs if you sign up for our email newsletter on our website. I'll link to that below. Wrapping up, it's fair to say that Trump will probably end up keeping more FFLs in business because of his removal of the zero tolerance policy at the ATF than any industry slump due to a Republican being in the White House. Shooting News Weekly again has a full report, but in fiscal year 2024, due to this zero tolerance policy for things as minor as clerical errors, almost 1,500 FFLs surrendered their licenses. Compare that to 2023 when only 80 did so. This is directly because of that zero tolerance policy implemented by the Biden administration. This zero tolerance policy was a direct attack on the Second Amendment through the back door. With our current system, FFLs are critical to keeping the Second Amendment alive, and if the smaller mom-and-pop shops are forced to shut down, then that right gets that much harder to exercise. But of course, that leads us to another Democrat-dispensed helping of diseased discourse. Democrats Adam Schiff and Chris Murphy, in what I can only describe as a desperate attempt to remain relevant, have reintroduced their odious bill to Congress that would ban so-called assault weapons. Never mind that these two barely understand the basics of firearms use or operation. While everyone seems to admit that this bill has no chance of passing, it would probably be a good idea to keep an eye on this one and dump the usual pile of disapproving complaints on your Congress critter's desk. The article that I read cited support for stricter gun laws in polling by Gallup, but given the continued growth of constitutional carry, I must reiterate the absolute state of public polling today. Polling tries to shape the narrative, not represent how people actually feel. Be incredibly skeptical of any polling, especially when all you are getting is a quote, X% of Americans favor Y thing.